Someone has already done and is already doing what you want to do. And no, they didn't fall into a rich family to do so. They were not born lucky. You know you can be more. You can have more, do more, and be more. You know this. You wouldn't be listening otherwise.
Welcome back to another episode of Key Factors Podcast. Wow. Welcome back to another episode of Key Factors Podcast, Real Estate AF. And the AF stands for And Finance. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that it seems to be pretty popular amongst sales professionals. But what we're finding is not very many of them are spending the time to learn about that topic. That topic is EQ. In other words, emotional intelligence. So that being said, I brought along two guests today. I'll quickly introduce them and I'll let them tell us about themselves. So first guest, Joey Rodriguez, one of my loan officers, and I've got Katie Hasson, my personal coach. How y'all doing?
Good.
Well, thank you.
Awesome. So guys, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, background, where you came from, what industry you're in, how long you've been in that industry, and then we'll go from there. Joey, you want to start?
Yes, I'm Joey Rodriguez. I'm a loan officer for I Think Mortgage, along with you, Mark. So glad to be here up in La Cantera. I did start at the broker channel, but have quickly moved to the banking world where I find it's a little more suited to just my personal needs. I am a native Texan. My family still lives along the coast near Victoria, so I like to call it the Goldilocks zone, not too close, not too far.
Okay,
So,
good deal.
yeah.
Good deal. And Joey, what made you jump into this industry? Like, what is your background in and what led you to this?
I've been in the food and beverage industry for pretty much my entire life, except when I went to college. And when I bought my first home about 5 years ago, my loan officer and realtor had urged me to do so. They thought that it would be a good fit, that I'd be good at it, and that stuck with me. I did have some things to do right after I closed on the home. I had to redo the home, and then COVID happened, and so I wasn't able to pursue it right away. But once time opened up, I said, I think it's time for me to take it to the next level. So that's when I just took the next step.
And on my side, I think mortgage. So it's a pretty good fit, huh?
Yeah, love
Good
it.
deal.
Love it.
All right, Katie Hasson, my coach. I've had her 5 years. I've been lucky enough to, get all the benefits of this relationship. And I want you to, if you can, tell us about your background. You've been talking about it all day long. Just one more time, if you would.
Oh, that's okay. I'm excited to be here again.
Awesome. And this is Katie's third time on the podcast.
Third podcast, third location.
That's right.
Yeah. So I am from Florida, born and raised in St. Petersburg, Tampa area. So it's fun to be here in San Antonio again. But yeah, let's see, background. So went to school in Tampa, USF, graduated with international business and Spanish, thinking I was going to go into the business world, and ended up selling books door to door.
Okay.
That's how I got my start in sales. Built teams, recruited, sold, and then went into the family of companies that I am with now for 8.5 years, which is Southwestern Consulting. So professional sales and leadership coaching, specializing in everything in personal and professional development. So yeah, excited to be here.
The guru of all gurus. So today we actually spent all of the day up until this point doing kind of a roadshow, providing valuable information and workshops to sales counselors, realtors, etc. And it was on the basis of emotional intelligence and how to utilize that in yourself to then sell the way people want to buy. And I believe that's a big topic that's going around. The idea has been around for many years, but the study in individuals like salespeople, like-minded individuals that we associate with, it's kicked around as a catchphrase versus a practice that we actually utilize to grow our business, to connect better with our customers, to connect better with our employees and colleagues, et cetera. And I wanted to dive deep into that today if we could. I know that from the presentation, the first one that Katie gave this morning, that I said that Joey was a bit of a detective and also a bit of a counselor. But Katie, if you could tell us about the different type of characteristics and behaviors so we can start kind of as a big picture, and then we'll stem off from there.
And I love this topic, and I appreciate the compliment. And I will also say this is definitely one of those topics that there's no finish line in learning this. Like, I'm
Right.
still actively practicing it, even though I've been studying it for years and working on it. Like, there is still so much more to learn and grow with. So, with what you were saying in regards, because obviously there's some EQ, and then with what you were referencing to what we coach on in terms of navigate being a detective, there's 4 different behavior styles. And there's a whole bunch of different tests out there, whether it's Enneagram or DISC or Myers-Briggs. But with what we coach on and navigate, it's a fighter, detective, entertainer, and counselor. And I believe you had referenced pinning Joey as a detective, which high level means like the analytical, maybe overthinker, likes to know why type of behavior style. Did that answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And I want to take a moment back just a sec. JC, I think you turned mine up. I'm the first one. She's the third. There you go. Yeah. So you mentioned assessment. One is DISC assessment. The other is Myers-Briggs. And many employers, corporations, organizations utilize this at the early stages when hiring employees to determine are they going to fit into our organization. Now, what is, I guess, so important about these different assessments? Now, obviously, each one of them tests different things and give us different results based on who you are. And it's very rare that somebody's DISC assessment matches someone else's. But what is the importance of those things?
Yeah, I think, and each test is going to measure something different, whether it's how you think, act, and feel, what your behavior style is, what your, I know I've coached clients in different industries that have like a predictor of a potential, or like we're even investing in the cultural index one, so it's all about understanding, are you putting the best people in the best seats?
It's a good
So
tie.
there's so many different aspects of these types of tests, and personally, my own opinion is I think they're all valuable. I think you can learn something different from each one. Someone can, as we were talking about earlier today, someone can show up differently in their natural style versus their adapted style, or if they're under stress, they might show up differently. So how do you best sell the way someone wants to buy, but also how do you best lead this person the way they're going to be motivated and based on where they're at, both in their career and what's happening personally and professionally?
That's a good, I guess, lead into the concept. And you mentioned quite a bit there that we can actually dissect. So the first concept is the selling versus utilizing this concept to sell and utilizing this concept to lead, manage, mentor, etc. And within the different traits, and I know that you're typically used to selling or coaching leaders, mentors, heads of a team, but they're also salespeople. This presentation that you gave is typically formed around the concept of targeting that mentor, that leader, to help them coach their staff, their employees, their sales force, etc. Was it difficult changing it out to showing the salespeople how to utilize it to sell?
I think it's all sales, to be honest with you. Recruiting is sales, leading is sales. At the end of the day, there's a lot of things that apply to helping understand where someone's at and helping them see where you're coming from as well too. So to answer your question directly, no, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I have to agree with you. When we were putting this thing together, they're very relatable to one another and applied almost the same way in regards to whether you are selling a customer or essentially selling your employees or sales force to do what they're supposed to do to increase their production. Joey, with you being in that presentation this morning, Was that your first time kind of getting an in-depth look at what EQ was and how it could be applicable?
An in-depth look, yeah.
Yeah.
But I had been exposed to it before. I can't remember I remember one way, but there was another way. But an in-depth look, an actual sort of personality styles or coping or behavior styles, and that applying to buying and selling, no, I didn't see that before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that the folks out there listening will be able to, at the end of this discussion, either want to seek further education in this and utilize it to better themselves, or like me, when I read the book Emotional Intelligence, relate heavily to what we're talking about already. Just didn't know, oh wow, that's emotional intelligence that I do with the people that I do, and that's what they are, versus saying that they are combative or etc. No, that's a fighter. Oh, okay. So before we go down the road of those, Katie, you discussed different 4 different, and I don't know what to call them, but it was the
Pieces of
yeah,
the
if
4
you
different
could take that
pieces.
away, so that can kind of start building the blocks for what we get into.
Yeah, and I think higher level, maybe a good place to start would be, what EQ is, right? We
Perfect.
talked about
Yeah.
like IQ, emotion, or from an intellectual standpoint, like learning things, scoring well on tests, like increasing your IQ. Well, EQ is like some of the softer skills. Like, how do you relate to your emotions? How do you leverage that not only for yourself, but for that other person you're interacting with, or persons, like the people around you? So there's 4 main areas of, and this is such a deep topic. We could go on
Oh, and we are.
lots of different tangents with this. But I love diving in and exploring this because, like I said, there's no finish line when it comes to this. But the 4 different areas of emotional intelligence is, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and social management. So
Okay. And let's start with self-awareness. What is a basic concept of self-awareness? Because after we go through each of them, I would like to kind of see how that then applies to each of the characteristics of them.
um, self-awareness to me is understanding and knowing yourself. It's being open to taking a hard look, not only at what your strengths are, but what are my triggers? What are the things that rock me emotionally? Like, what are those? What are my values? What are the things that are most important to me that I hold dear and that I can say without a doubt, like, I believe in this. I think it's very multifaceted, and also not just like your values, but like, what does that internal dialogue look like? When does that show up, both positive and negative? It's being able to seek feedback, and not only who do I see myself as, but how do others perceive me, and can I look at that objectively?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And let's for you, Joey, did this concept kind of hit home to the sense that we're able to be self-aware of that concept? Because I think the first piece to this that is super important for anyone that is wanting to learn more or work on it themselves is you've got to be honest. You've got to be honest with yourself first. And that has a lot to do and speaks volumes to the self-awareness piece. I mean, if you're sitting there lying to yourself in the mirror, 5 foot nothing, saying that you can dunk the basketball, chances are you're lying to yourself.
Absolutely. It goes back. What really interested me when you said the word values in the class, because there's what we would like to be about ourselves, and then there's what is, and there's also what is most beneficial to the situation. And as much as my, I guess, instinct to react as a fighter, and I want this way, I want that way, I know what I want, I know how, I know why, and as useful as that has been for me growing up, or whatever the reasons why, I have found, excuse me, I have found and have learned that the other behavior methods for Joey actually work out better, not just for Joey, but for everyone else as well. So when I'm more analytical or detailed when I'm more of a counselor and consider others, I have to be also aware not to overdo it in those areas as well. But I do, it's about finding what the best solution is for you and utilizing those values. What are you after? What are you trying to accomplish and why?
Yeah, no, I mean that is kind of along the lines of all of this in itself. I feel like your thought was cut short there.
I think that
Elaborate.
too, yeah.
This is a long form podcast, allowing
Yeah.
you to not have to just do snippets. The folks watching, tuning in, listening to this, most have a short attention spans, but I think the folks listening, they want to hear your thoughts.
Well, I did, whenever there was the pie chart of the 4 different styles, there was one piece of the pie for each style that said the fear. So when you're the fear of that style, so
Okay.
that actually says a lot about that particular style of person. So, like I was saying, instinctually, I would be a fighter. Like I already know, I've already thought about it. I already know this is what I want, and so I want the information. What is it? And
Is
then
it this pie chart that you're talking about here, or
it was those, yeah.
okay? Because we're going to go through each one of these. I'll throw it up on the screen, all that jazz here shortly. So hold that thought.
Yeah.
That being the case, I now want to get into the natural versus adaptive before we dive into this different traits or different, what do you call them? The fighter, the detective.
I would say they're just behavioral styles. And
Okay.
like when you're thinking about this, navigate and different behavioral styles essentially fall under this whole umbrella of EQ because it is getting to know yourself and your behaviors and things like that. So in a sense, they're a little bit separate, but they're still intertwined. So, for example, like navigate gears more toward, or what we talked about today, more towards selling and buying, like things like self-awareness. It could be as simple as understanding that when we were kids, you were happy, mad, sad, or angry. You know, we didn't have a big vocabulary. And I think I told you before, I had an EQ coach, Jules Wilhelm. She's awesome. And I did an EQ course because even coaches need coaches. And one of the biggest things that I found in there was any emotion, right? You have to name it to tame it.
Oh, I like that. You have to name it to tame it. Okay.
Yeah. And if we don't
Putting that away right here.
Yes. If we don't have a good vocabulary of emotions, if you can't adequately describe what you're feeling, how are you going to work through that emotion? How are you going to regulate it? You won't even know what support looks like because you can't describe how you're feeling. So I would say the general population goes around their day to day just reacting to things and and so this is why it's one of those topics that I love talking about because it requires work. It requires you to do a self check-in. How am I feeling right now? And it's not like, oh, how am I feeling? Woo woo.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we're human. We have emotions. And if you can better check in with yourself, assess what you're actually feeling, describe it, then you can better adequately ask for support and move through it.
Yeah.
When a lot of people will just push it down or ignore it.
That's very true. I mean, most number one aren't even aware that this study, this concept is even around to be able to define it like you were saying. And then that next step is applying it. How do you use the information that you've just acquired or discovered, not only about yourself, but about the different people that you're coming in contact with? And as a sales professional, the goal is to come in contact with a ton of people. So you should, in my opinion, once you kind of go down this journey of EQ and the discovery of not how to apply it just yet, but that there are different types of traits, different types of behaviors. It's like, okay, wow, I want to talk to even more people so that I can start pinning different types of traits or behaviors on them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I would like to get into the different characteristics of each one real quick, and then we can go all over the place with this topic. Yeah, I love this topic because it's one of those things that, like I was saying, once you discover it's there, you get to practice it in many different ways. You can talk to your spouse differently, your friends differently, and see how their reactions are to the new way of you going about handling that discussion or that objection or that point that you were trying to make, etc. And it can be applied so many different ways. So JC, can you? Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say it's similar
Bring it on.
to what we were talking about earlier. It's not like the golden rule, treat people how you want to be treated. It's the platinum rule, like treat people how they want to be treated. And it's almost like I think we've talked about this before, like the 5 love languages. It's like, okay, am I giving love the same way I'm receiving it? It doesn't always mean romantically, but it's along those same lines.
Right.
It's like, okay, let me make sure I understand that the way I like to receive things isn't always going to be the same way that someone else does.
Can you give an example of that would tie that together? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I mean, when I think of this, I think of like typically people that are closest to us, like our best friends or our family or spouses or whoever that may be, are people that know us the best, so they know how to push our buttons.
Sure.
And I've had to acknowledge, even with my own family, like, oh, they might show up in a way where they like to give love as like acts of service, whether it's coming over and helping, to clean or do this or that, or I might receive it in quality time, or someone else, you might appreciate more words of affirmation. Hey, I really appreciated you showing up, or you did a great job with this. Does that make sense?
It does. It absolutely does. So I guess if we were to start a discussion on this, where would we start? Which one of these?
Do you want to start with the behavior styles?
Yeah.
And then we'll go
which one
back
would
to
I start
back to the 4 quadrants of emotional intelligence. Like I said, this kind of falls under like, this is how different people show up in buying and selling situations. But yeah, the 4 different behavioral styles would be.
Okay. So JC, will you throw that reference up there if you would? So the first behavioral trait or the
style.
First behavioral style is a fighter that you guys see on the screen. And within that fighter mentality, can you explain this to us? Like I'm an infant.
Yeah. Typically fighters, they are the like the driver, the A-type personality. Like, what do you want? What can I help you with? So the people that are very results driven, they're like, get to the point. What do you want? Type of people.
Okay. And I would say, me personally, I'm a bit of a fighter. I'm not going to say I'm all the way of a fighter. I'm a bit of a fighter. Can you, Joey, after today's presentations, discussions, all that good stuff, tell me why you're not a fighter?
Well, I was saying earlier, instinctually, I am a fighter, and I have had that. I don't know now if it was instinct or coping mechanism.
Okay.
It's one of the two. I don't want to overthink it, but I think it's more instinct to behave that way.
And what's funny is you just gave away your style by saying what you just said.
Okay.
I don't want to overthink it.
Okay.
Okay, right? But we will get to your style here in a bit.
Well, I have, like I said, learned to be a different style because it just works out better for everyone.
Yeah.
And it also goes back to the whole processing self-awareness that Katie mentioned earlier.
Okay.
You're having that good hard look in the mirror. Maybe not every day it's, some, meeting with God that you're having, but at least you're acknowledging at some point during the day,
right?
What went right, what went wrong, how can I improve? And for me, the way I do that is I stick to a very solid routine. It's not that I'm not adaptable. Obviously, I'm in this industry, I have to be, but if I can maintain those core values that I have that not only serve my personal needs, but my emotional needs, if I can stick to those actions consistently, if it's daily or weekly, whatever they are, then I can actually process my self-awareness and how I'm interacting with others and these behavior styles. So, what was the question again?
Exactly. So, can you tell me why you're not a fighter?
I'm not
it's
a
okay.
fighter.
You already answered it. I love it. I do.
I think I answered it.
Yes,
somewhat.
you did. You
I
did.
I'm not as reactive anymore.
By the way that you just analyzed all of that, You answered it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I was trying to say I'm not as reactive anymore. It might be part just, growing, but
Yes. And also one of the things that I learned, and it wasn't necessarily today, but what was reaffirmed is you don't have to just be one behavioral style. The difference between a natural versus adaptive. And I think that's what you're kind of speaking to. Your new adaptive, yeah, you can adapt into any of them because you have been privy now to the emotional intelligence concept, and now then apply that to sales, and then take the EQ and determine who you are talking to, who you are selling on the other
Yes.
side to adapt accordingly.
yes, that's what actually I told Katie on the way out of the class. We were walking together, and I said, now I think in sales, everyone sort of copes with having to, I guess, pivot with their call or their sales with whoever they're dealing with, but without the, I guess, conscious awareness of, okay, what is this person expressing right now?
Yeah.
Or who is that person? It's more of like just pivoting and reacting and do I need to be more aggressive? Do I need to be more submissive? And without truly understanding the other person.
Right. And go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that leads into what we were talking about with like the 4 different parts, like social awareness and social management. It's like, okay, what are the cues that I'm picking up, both verbally and non-verbally? And then obviously that depends if you're on the phone or in person, because you can read a person and their body language and and then like, what are they saying? What are they not saying?
Right.
How am I using this as information? That's a huge thing that I learned with this concept, is that it's so easy to take things personally and react to someone else's emotions versus getting curious and saying, what can I learn about this? Like, emotions equal information. So if I'm sensing someone else's emotions, what is that telling me about that person or about their situation?
That makes sense.
Like I said, it's a practice. So.
It is a practice, kind of like a doctor. They're not they would call it instead of a doctor practice or law practice, they'd call them law perfect or
yeah.
doctor
Practice
perfect.
makes progress. I was like, okay, what is this? What is this cues? Yeah.
So back to this reference, if you could, JC, we're going to just run through these real quick on the different behavioral styles, and then I want to kind of go into some concepts that play off of it. So we've got the fighter. We just went over that. Communication plan with the fighter, behavioral styles. Katie, can you know what? We'll come back to this. Let's go to the next one. The counselor. The counselor itself. Go ahead, if you could.
Usually when a fighter is interacting with a counselor, they don't have a lot of patience. Fighters and their tonality usually are loud, like talking about tonality quadrants, like loud and slow, right?
Okay.
They are fat, like they're loud because they're assertive, they're confident. Whereas counselors will usually talk a little bit slower and a little bit lower, and usually take their time in their speech.
That makes sense. It does.
Whereas like the detectives and fighters are like, okay, speed it up a little bit.
So you mentioned detectives. Let's go to that one next. The detective. Go ahead.
Yeah, the detectives are those overthinkers, the perfectionists, the analytical. It's like, why am I going to do this versus doing that? Yeah, they can get into that like analysis paralysis.
Sound like somebody?
At times. Yeah.
I like it.
Doug is a good sport.
Absolutely. And then the last one here
is the entertainer. They're the loud talkers, the fast talkers. Like they're the let me tell you about this. Oh my gosh. Oh, usually you can spot an entertainer pretty quick.
And I mentioned it today.
Sound familiar, Mike?
It does. It does. It does. I mentioned this today at the end of the first workshop, and that was that there's no negative connotation to this. We're not saying, hey, you're an entertainer. Oh, that's bad. No, that's just kind of a characteristic style that you have. It's a trait that you carry from, I don't know, your upbringing, your chemical balances, whatever you want to tie it to, but it's not a bad thing. It is a great thing once you are aware of which style you are because then you know how to receive information, how you want to be spoken to. The idea that we were talking about is sell how people want to be sold. The platinum rule, essentially. What is that platinum rule again?
Yeah. Well, people love to buy but hate to feel sold. So it's like selling the way they want to buy.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's funny. People hate to be sold,
But love to buy. But unless you're talking to a salesperson, and then like a
There you go.
salesperson appreciates that. Okay.
I love to be
I've
sold.
knocked on so many doors where it's just like, oh, you're in sales. Okay, yeah, cool. Let me hear your pitch. I mean, I bought from a pest control guy, and I was like, hey, can I give you a couple tips? Take a step back.
Yeah.
Like, turn sideways.
Absolutely. And now, Katie, let me ask you, being a professional sales coach, is that something that you have noticed within your interactions personally that drives you insane?
No, I love it because then I'm like, okay, are they giving me a buying atmosphere? Are they giving me the opportunity to say yes or no? Are they taking the pressure off? Or are they just showing up and throwing up?
But what if we're just talking about life, not sales? Is it inherent that you're now, while listening to this story, that they're telling you, going, okay, Mr. Entertainer? Does that make sense? Like you're
Yeah.
so well versed in this idea and this concept that it bleeds into your personal space.
Yeah, I think if you're in sales, if that's your career, it shows up in a lot of places. I have a friend who makes fun of me for that all the time. She's like, you're always like in networking mode and work mode. And I'm like, well, I love meeting people and I love talking to people. So yeah, especially if they can benefit, or if there's going to be value there. If I can I love being a connector for people and connecting with new people. So
Yeah.
if I can do that, absolutely.
And in addition to that concept, and you guys can give me feedback on this, but there's a lot of folks that have to turn it on or turn it off, the idea of being a salesperson. And then there's a certain point, or is there a certain point where that's just who you are?
Mm.
It's who you've become. And the idea was to get to this place or get to this level of self-awareness, level of understanding communication skills and how people want to receive it. Is text message the right way to get to this person? Is it a phone call? Is it sending them a video message? And you don't learn those things just out the gates. It takes tons and tons of interaction and failure. And, oh man, I talked to that person this way and they did not like it type meaning. What have you discovered on your side? Because I know you're making calls daily. You're speaking with different people. You're getting hung up on. You're getting great calls. I mean, it's all kinds of stuff when we are dealing in sales.
Yes. Well, and that happened this afternoon.
Tell us about
several different ways I either perceive the situation or one time I was sending a text and I'm like, well, I sort of know him. What did we talk about last time? And I checked the CRM, the notes, and I'm like, well, I kind of know him. He sent me, and I'm trying to figure out how to respond to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just ended up sending him something like, hope you're well. Do you make it up to La Cantera often? Because that was actually the last text.
Right.
Once I read it. Again, once I took the time to not just react quickly. Hey, I want to check off my list of people because I have a very regimented way I call people and how it pops up in my CRM for when to do so.
Yeah.
Right. And instead of just getting through each one, I stopped and took the time and said, okay, what do the notes say? And what did we do before? And what did we talk about last month? And I scrolled up the text messages. And after I did that, I was able to respond sort of, I think in a more, even without talking to him and applying emotional intelligence, I was able to actually, I guess, again, going back to the self-awareness, okay, this is what I can do constructively.
But lo and behold, that is emotional intelligence. You are literally using your intelligence to make sure that your response is going to be well received, or I can't say well received, but the best likelihood of reception that will get you to the next phase in this buying cycle or in this buying period for that person.
What I heard in that?
Tell me.
There's it's like a fine line, especially with a detective, where yes, sales is a numbers game. Just go make more calls. The answer lies behind the next call or the next
Yeah.
door. And we can also swing between the extremes where a detective could be like, well, let me go research this person. When was the last time I talked to him?
Yeah.
Every single detail. And I think there's a balance between knowing what you talked about and having the appropriate pre-approach or information to
Mm-hmm.
approach this person tactfully and strategically versus like, let me just overthink the entire situation.
Mhm.
I think there's a fine line between, let me just make this call and talk to this person and be present with this person, and let me actually remember what we talked about.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, there is an old school concept that I was taught many years ago to help me when I first started sell someone, and that was called mirroring. Have you ever heard of that concept?
Mhm.
I think it's very elementary compared to what we're talking about now, but I think that it allows the salesperson to get more information initially out of their prospect. Because at a certain point, you can't continue to mirror. And it wasn't until this moment that this idea hit me. You can't continue to mirror after a certain point, because if you mirror a fighter with the fighter at the same time, wouldn't that lead to more of a conflict? I mean, what are your thoughts? If you are a fighter and you're portraying that fighter to a fighter versus speaking to a fighter the way a fighter likes to receive, and that's deep in itself, wouldn't that lead to conflict? So at a certain point, that mirroring concept has to stop, and you have to start applying what you've learned within that little period of mirroring that you did with that consumer or prospect.
I think there's two different prongs with what you're talking
Okay.
about there. One that comes to mind is like when it comes to just like the emotions of a human being. And one thing that I learned from the EQ course that I was in, and we'll table the other prong for the fight or response that you're talking about.
Okay.
One aspect of that is like when you question emotion, like if you're telling me a story about how you had an appointment the other day and you got frustrated because you felt like the person wasn't listening. If I'm calling out that emotion that I hear, it does two things. I'm like, okay, Mark, so it sounds like in that lunch you got frustrated and annoyed.
Mhm.
That is going to give you the opportunity to do two things: clarify and help me connect with you deeper. Well, no, it wasn't frustration and I was just disappointed. So it gives clarity to the context of what the emotion actually was that you were experiencing. So either I'm going to better understand what you're trying to tell me, or you're going to feel better heard and connected.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's one prong when it comes to like, when you say mirroring, it's like I'm listening for what emotion you're experiencing so you can give me better context to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does.
When it comes to like the behavioral style of like the fighter, speaking directly to like how they want to be sold. Like, am I going to fight or combat that person? No. But if I'm going to try to tell them all the details of A, B, and C, and you're a fighter and you're just like, get to the point, like, tell me what it is and I'll tell you what I want, if I want it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I go down the rabbit hole of details, or if I get too excited and I try to paint this whole picture for you, I'm going to talk past the buying line. So it's not necessarily like fighting that person. I'm going to fight you. I might just get to the point a little bit sooner.
You mentioned something that I want to hone in on real quick, or I guess better understand. Past the buying line. What is that? Joey, do you know what that means? Because I don't. I'd like to know.
Yeah, I think I understand. what
Tell
you
me.
mean.
We'll see if you're wrong.
It means that they've either done a number of things. They're I don't want to say they're done with you, but at that time, at that moment, you either haven't convinced them, they've gotten bored, or they might not believe you, or you did something that irked them, or for some reason they don't want to listen to you anymore about this
Mhm.
right then.
Okay.
So that anything that you say after that, unless it's to sort of wrap things up, they're not going to buy, basically.
Okay.
Not right then, at least. And I think she really means in general, they're not going to buy.
What and can you better articulate that if you can? Because the opinion side, I like it. I don't know if it's right or not, but it makes sense.
Yeah, no.
Oh, good. Oh,
You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know.
No, and it's not like there's like a hard and fast right and wrong. But I think if you've been in sales long enough now, like any industry, you've probably had an interaction where you're like, man, I felt like I was on the same page with that person, and then it just fell apart. And you're like, what the heck happened?
Yeah.
Well, you could have talked past the buying line, right? If you're not totally present with that person, if you're not picking up on those social cues, if you're not reading that, like if they're asked, like we could talk about buying signs, right? If they're asking questions, if they're leaning in, if they're, if they're already showing you that they're interested in like asking good questions, then you talking about the details is talking past the buying line. It's time to close.
That's what I was looking for right there, which is essentially you are selling too much and you missed your opportunity, because the idea, and I think you guys correct me if I'm wrong, Joey, I get what you were saying there.
Yeah.
But there's a sense of we are in sales and our job is to overcome the no's, overcome the I'm not interested, or else it wouldn't be called sales. It would just be called buying, if that makes sense. If everybody said yes, are we really salespeople, or are we facilitators of whatever it is that
Order
takers, essentially? And I call them, they just read off of a screen, essentially. We, in any sales position, it has a level of skill associated with it. And at a certain point within that buying, cycle or buying experience, I should say, there's a certain point, just like Katie said, that, okay, they are ready to buy. It is time to close, assume the close. Let's move this to the next phase in that process. And if you sell past it, now you could have shot yourself in the foot, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Is that more so along the lines of you crossed or passed the buying line?
Yeah. And I like to reference this, and I know we've talked about this before, because so many people get the, like, I don't want to be salesy, I don't want to be pushy, right? And the true definition of sales is not forcing anyone to do anything. It's not pushing anyone to buy anything. It's literally asking good questions, finding a need, and providing a service. It's helping someone get from point A to point B faster. It's helping them make a decision that's going to be best for them. But you can't do that if you don't ask good questions, and if you're not present, if you're not listening and paying attention to what they're displaying.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the idea of asking the questions is something that I'm going to relate it to real estate and mortgage, what we do. From 2020 up until this point, many real estate professionals, mortgage professionals were turning into order takers because they didn't have to ask the questions. The thing that pushed them to the point that they were ready to buy was the rate and the payment and the frenzy that was taking place. And now we're hearing people that bought during that pandemic regret it because they felt like it was, oh man, but I also don't want to lose this rate right now. Mm-hmm. So the idea behind pushing it too far and not asking enough questions, I mean, I don't think that you can ask too many questions unless you're pushing past that buying, what was it? The buying line. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important for people to know and understand. But at the same time, by asking the questions, it allows you to learn more about that customer and the formulation of how you should address the close, address that moving forward.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the post that I did today, the ad that I did today, and I just typed it up quickly, the caption actually, and it said, it was, let me create a formula of different tools we have in our arsenal that will be catered for you. So I listed the different tools, and a combination of those, depending on what you and I talk about in this market, I said those words, will be, catered for you. So that's really what the questions are all about. You're right.
And that's strong. It's strong because you'll come in contact with people that are selling, mortgage lenders, realtors, but let's say we're in a situation of a mortgage lender providing value to a realtor, and they believe that they've got to just unload everything that they have on this realtor when they don't know what that realtor's actually looking for in value. Mm-hmm. Like, what is valuable to you? Have you even asked them, or you're just going to work? What is it? Show up and throw up.
And you're making me think of a topic that we talked about earlier, that I think is important, whether you're in real estate or mortgage or title or any affiliated business in real estate. I think a lot of people underestimate the value of a first impression. And I think we've talked about this before, especially when you're like in real estate, your prospect is the general population.
Yeah, that's right.
And so relating to EQ with what we're talking about is like, do you know how you're making that person feel? Whether that's a first interaction, a second interaction, like the whole concept of EQ is people don't care what you say or what you did, but they're going to remember how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And are you aware of how you're making people feel in the interactions you're having at the grocery store or at this event or wherever you might be? Because somebody might refer me this realtor and I'm like, oh yeah, I've met them before. They were pretty dismissive to me. I didn't really feel that great about talking to them. Were they even aware that they made me feel that way?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. You mentioned something earlier today that goes along those lines, and goodness, it's okay. I lost it. We're going to keep moving forward.
Come back to me.
Yeah. So this idea of applying what you've learned, because you can technically ask too many questions, but if you're asking the right questions, it will lead to a stronger relationship, a stronger sense of who that person is that you're selling, building the relationship with, and also show you how to address the emotional side of things. That's what it was. You mentioned people don't buy based on something, they buy based on emotion.
They don't buy on logic. They based on emotion.
Right.
Like the whole concept that we talked about, like without pain, people don't change.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you don't know what this person's need is or what their pain to change is or create that sense of urgency, they're not going to know and they're not going to buy. And like I said, full transparency, this is something that I practice what I preach, and there's always room for improvement. I'm not closing 100%.
Right.
But it is something to be aware of when it comes to like, okay, am I making sure that I'm asking these needle moving questions to really identify where the opportunity is, based on, something we talked about related to selling is like based on who this person is. Like if I know that you're a fighter and you like to have control, well, then I'm going to ask maybe your opinion on like, hey, based on what we've talked about so far, like, what do you like best? Or, give you the options. What are you thinking? Do you like option A or option B? Like, tell me your thoughts. So being able to leverage different situations based on who you're talking to.
That makes sense. So now I guess that's a good transition into understanding, once you've discovered what types of traits that this person across the table, on the phone, on the Zoom call, in person maybe, portray. Maybe they're a fighter, maybe they're a detective, maybe they're an entertainer, etc. Now, how do you take that information to leverage and close the sale sooner? And this almost, it sounds like it's a negative thing. Like, how do you prey on them? But that's not what we're doing. We're trying to relate to them better. We're trying to speak to them the way they want to be spoken to versus speak to them the way we want to be. That's what it was. Don't treat people the way that you want to be treated. Treat people the way that they want to be treated. But in order to know that, you've got to have a little, I want to say common sense, but it's not so common. The idea is to be outside of the common and understand that there is more to a person on the emotional side of things. And that can change quite often, but sometimes it doesn't. And once you pinpoint that kind of person and what traits they carry, how do you then use that information to leverage?
And this is such, like we referenced earlier, it's such a deep topic. Like
it is.
This could be a certain behavioral style, but there could be like life situations or emotional situations that are impacting the way that this person shows up as well too. So I like to make sure that that's clear. Like there's navigate and understanding selling the way people like to buy, and then like emotional intelligence like runs alongside of it, because at the end of the day, you got to be a human. You got to be relatable. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be able to meet somebody where they're at and empathize with them. And I think you and I've talked about this before. Like people don't care how much you know until you know how much they care. That's one of my favorite quotes. Don't ask me where it's from. But it's like, if if I know that you care about me, whether you're an agent or a mortgage person, if I know that you have my best interest, then I'm going to trust it.
Mm-hmm.
And people are going to buy from you because they know, like, and trust you. I don't need to know the ins and outs of the details because I know you have the best interests in mind.
Right. And how would one, okay, let me ask you, Joey, how would somebody go about gaining somebody's trust? How do you go about gaining somebody's trust? I mean, we're all learning here, so there's no wrong or right answers. It's just giving a different perspective on this.
Right. It's a very loaded question. In a number, in a number of ways.
Yeah.
Yes, we are in sales.
Yeah.
Yes, we're trying to provide a service. Now we're trying to apply emotional intelligence consciously. Before it was, like I said, pivoting unconsciously, trying to maneuver.
And there's many people that are doing that still. And they may be decent at sales, but getting to that next level requires what we're talking about.
Yeah. And so I have to go back to the self. You know, if you know what you're doing and why you're doing it, and you're doing it for the right reason, you're doing it every day, eventually that shows, that radiates out. Now, I'm not saying that just because you may think you're doing everything perfect, that everyone's going to know it right when you meet them, but it does radiate out. Like I said, I have a very strict routine with how I behave, and the people who are closest to me know who I am, know they can trust me, and that has a ripple effect to the other people who maybe it's a referral, or maybe they heard, obviously, like I said, a referral. So with that, knowing how I want to ask my questions for what the needs I'm going to provide for, knowing who that person is, whether it's just who they are as a person, or what they're going through right then, or what mood they're in that day. Combining all that, not overthinking it, being myself, and again, going back to my own personal needs. Did I look myself in the mirror? Did I have my workout? Did I eat the way I think I would make me function better? So those traits those activities that I know bring me life and uphold my values.
Yeah.
When I'm doing that, I know that I did and said it for the right reason. And not only that can I communicate that, but I can actually be open to, people like Katie, who are saying, oh, well, have you thought about this avenue in your sales approach? Which I guess I haven't till now.
Right. And it's almost a blind spot epiphany moment when you discover, oh shit, I have been just trying to plow through these people when it should be trying to understand them better so that I can then utilize what I know to relate, to get in touch with their emotions and cater to what is going to be more receptive on their end.
And another thing I think is worth mentioning is, when you are, I guess, doing the right thing for yourself, you could say, it also includes your own training in what you're selling.
Oh, I mean,
So
at the end of the day,
taking the time to know your product, taking the time to care enough about it.
Man, this is another conversation. We go down this rabbit hole.
It's a very important supportive element in caring for their needs.
You struck a chord there that is one of those things that is a staple when getting into sales. Let me ask you something. Do you believe that you can sell something if you don't believe in the product yourself that you're selling?
Personally, no. I mean, selling is a transference of emotions. We talked about that earlier today. Like, your confidence is going to be their confidence. And if you have to believe in what you're selling, in my opinion, yeah, like, you can fake it till you make it, but that's where the whole stigma of, like, being salesy comes from.
Yeah,
like, if you don't believe in it, then why are you doing it? And like, along the same lines here with this topic, like, emotion has motion.
Explain.
So relating, like, it's either a towards or away motion.
Okay.
Like, either you're towards motivated or away motivated. If you think about it, if you have a fear of something, if it gets to a certain point, you're going to act on it because of that fear. If the fear of, like, staying the same, or actually, I just read old book, but Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah. I remember that book. Yeah, it's a good book.
Oh, it's such a good one. But basically, if you have enough fear about not changing is going to be worse than actually changing, then you're going to change.
Right.
But fear is an emotion, right? So if we can understand that every emotion has some sort of push or pull, that can help us understand not only ourselves, but who we're interacting with as well, too.
That makes good sense. And back to the point is, I don't believe that I could sell something that I don't believe in, because I did it when I first started selling, raw selling, which was car sales. And then at moving into the finance side of things, I felt kind of gross. Now, some people do believe in it. Hey, go for it. Or people have different reasons for doing what they do. But me personally, I didn't feel good selling something that I did not believe in. If I'm supposed to sell you a warranty and it's a brand new car, I think you've got a warranty already with that brand new car, bud. So I'm not going to sit here and oversell you. And the idea of overselling you to make the money that you need to make just doesn't sit right with me. Whereas in mortgage, I truly believe, because I personally have done it multiple times, that the only real way to get ahead in this life is to either invent something that nobody else has. And even if you do, you got to get it to market. And that's another freaking road that good luck going down it, because I'm on it right now. And it's a hard road with no end in sight and with no fruits yet to benefit from.
Right.
But if you are, going down this idea of selling something. Oh, hold on. There we go. Shoot, lost my train of thought.
If you're good at selling something.
If you believing in the idea of the mortgage, that's where we were. I firmly believe that the only way to get ahead, like I was saying, is inventing something, or to start putting money into real estate, because you got to put money somewhere. And most of us don't have the cash to just buy a home outright. So the next best thing is to finance the property. I believe that. Why? Because I've built pretty good solid foundation of wealth. It's not there yet, but a good foundation. And it was based on real estate. It wasn't me working my tail off. Now, it took me to work my tail off to obtain the real estate, kind of like our buyers, right? But that was something that, okay, I can now explain that passionately to a customer and give them my 2 cents based on not only my beliefs, my feelings, the emotional side of things, and the logical side of things by breaking it down. It's tough. And Katie, you can help me with this. Maybe it's tough from a mortgage aspect because we are selling something that's really untangible. Can you touch a loan? No. Can you throw a loan? No. You can throw a file at a wall. Hopefully it sticks concept, but you can't necessarily get a tangible benefit from securing a loan.
Selling a widget.
Yeah, it's not a thing. Where as opposed to the home on the real estate side, they're selling a home. That's the sexy that they're selling. For us, it is more of a logical approach to the selling because we're dealing with numbers. They're either going to work out or they're not. But at the same time, we still have to use the emotional intelligence when presenting those figures, when presenting those options, when presenting
very much so.
A lot of emotions around money, though.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
and a lot of perceptions around money,
and that meeting them where they are, I think, is very important with that. With that call, I had a call recently with a mom and her 2 sons, and the mom and I were talking. She might not be the best for the loan, but the 2 sons might be, but I needed to speak with them. So her and I have been talking for a long time, and she's on board. She understands. We're past all that. But one of the sons, when I talked to him, he doesn't want his credit pulled. He doesn't understand. He didn't think his brother, all these things. And so I had to meet him where he was, which was him to understand him to understand if he chooses to go down this path, this is the expectations part. So what he can expect as far as the home, like the real estate, and us, and why. Why would he want to do this? You know, why? What is the realtor saying? What's his mom saying?
Right.
What's his situation? What is his? Well, even things like, what does your future look like?
Yeah. Yeah. That's getting deep into the emotional
And
side of things.
I don't want to oversell it because, again, like Katie's saying, people are, when it comes to actual money, it's a touchy subject, and we're selling money pretty much. So
We're selling dreams.
and we are actually,
Yeah.
and I need to let him know what one way is what are his other options. So let's go down his other options. That's also a way to build trust. Look, I'm as a mortgage advisor.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it.
Oh, I get that. And that can lead down multiple roads in itself in the selling cycles, so to speak. Katie, today you talked about the buying cycle, I believe it was.
Sales cycle.
Sales cycle. Can you list those? Are you able to just like, what are those?
Pre-approach,
Uh-huh.
approach,
Okay.
introduction, presentation, close, answer objections, referrals.
And there was another thing that you had touched on today when you asked the audience, and you said, which one to you guys do you think is the most important one? And most of them said presentation. Which one was the real most important part?
Well, and that's a logical response, right? Because
Right.
people are like, oh, people need to know the details and the facts and the figures, and it's all logical information.
Right.
But going back to the whole topic of today, people don't buy on logic; they buy on emotion.
Right.
So, getting into the introduction and into really getting to know that person and what their need is.
Would that be the pre-approach or the approach?
Introduction.
The introduction.
Or some people call it discovery, needs analysis.
Right.
And it looks different for every sales cycle and every industry. So,
and that in itself kind of drives home the point that I think I'm trying to make. This whole discussion here is when selling, when utilizing EQ to sell, to leverage, and it's not leverage in the sense that you're getting over on someone. It is leverage to the sense that it allows you to open the door that opens the next door that gets to the sale in the product that you believe in, is focusing on the relationship up front, the first impressions, the questions that you're asking, making sure that you are listening. That's right. You're listening. You're not just consuming it. You're listening it and making note mentally, or even just taking notes. And if they ask, why are you taking notes? Be honest. I want to be able to relate to you. I mean, you just mentioned the fact that your brother was in the hospital, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not going to go and push you if that is one of your concerns in the next week or so. But you just told me that, oh, he'll be fine and everything's good. So therefore, I feel like it's okay to proceed with this kind of conversation.
Right.
Does that make sense?
So calling yourself out, kind of.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that also is a strong practice, seeing the vulnerability side within that upfront introduction piece of it. And a lot of folks tend to skip that process, skip that first thing. They brush it off as if your reputation precedes you.
If I do a good job, then hopefully they'll just use me, or hopefully they'll send me people. Like you don't get what you don't ask for.
Or better yet, inherently thinking that they're going to use you because they were referred by somebody that you already closed, essentially. It's like each person is different. Just because they were referred to you by a trusted individual, a referral partner that you work with often, this is still a new person. And in order to communicate best with that person, you need to learn who that person is, how they feel, what buttons to push, etc.
It's a huge piece in listening.
What was that?
Like, it's a huge piece in listening. I think it's so easy for people to show up and think they have to have the answer. And we have, 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So are we listening twice as much as we're talking and letting that person feel heard? I think is huge. Which takes self-awareness to know, am I over talking right now?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and now let me ask you this. JC, what are we at time-wise?
6 minutes and 35 seconds.
Okay, we can start wrapping it up. So let me, I guess, finalize with this. now that we've kind of enlightened the listeners on the idea of emotional intelligence, and the goal was not to come up with some solution or some equation or code, because there is not one. There is a study, a concept, and different. Matter of fact, even these styles, behavioral styles, there are different styles. People view them
book on it.
absolutely.
Navigate 2.0.
There you go. So once someone is aware of this concept, is that now going to cause an internal battle, or does it just indicate that you're a bit more of a detective concept?
I mean, I'm not gonna, if I haven't run in a while, I'm not gonna go expect myself to run a marathon or have a marathon tomorrow. I'm gonna start with a mile.
I like that approach. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. I mean, that's part of meeting yourself where you're at, is like, okay, cool. If I've never understood this concept, I can't just go expect it. My next appointment is going to be great because I'm going to be so emotionally intelligent. It's a practice. And I've always talked with clients, especially my detective clients, about like, hey, it's going to be about this whole coaching process is going to be about progress, not perfection. And to take it to a next level, it's like practice is progress.
Absolutely.
You can't make progress if you're not practicing.
And only because I just recently picked up the game and am fascinated with it, I'm going to relate this to chess. Once you learn the rules of the game of chess, now it's time to go and practice it and learn from your mistakes and go out there and try different moves, take different risks within that realm of emotional intelligence, EQ. That being said, Joey, with what you've learned today, what do you think? Because I think you were a bit more self-aware. Number one, I think you were a bit more knowledgeable about EQ without knowing what EQ was. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think I am.
And that, in my opinion, similar to me, has a lot to do with either our upbringing or what we've gone through as a person to get to where we are now. That being said, what do you believe you're going to start doing differently with this little bit of information? Because as we've experienced here, we've talked an hour and I feel like we've gone round and round, but still got a lot of good out of this conversation. It's starting to like opening up the eyes and minds and ideas of this topic. What would you think, or what do you feel you're going to be doing moving forward? No right answers here.
Yeah.
Or is there?
Well,
Guys, I just messed him up, Mr. Detective over here.
It's going to be very interesting to incorporate this into what I'm already doing, but I'm going to try to have like a soft rollout, you might say, to start with what I learned today and just to be aware. Another thing is,
Keep going. Go ahead.
What I wanted to say was, you made me forget what I was going to say.
We were live, but go ahead.
No, I mean, okay.
What he was saying was like, you're gonna have
You're
like
gonna
a soft, like
roll
a
out.
practice.
There
Like
you
you're
go.
just gonna practice it.
Yeah, I'm going to start practicing and have a soft
aware.
roll up. Yes,
Yeah,
totally.
aware of
And
how you show up. Yeah.
And then I was going to say there's got to be, for me personally, a way for me to convert what I know to be a sincere effort to help the person I'm working with, regardless of where they are, and converting it to sales.
Yeah.
Because I'm a person too, and I have to make the sales because, this is what I do for a living. So how am I going to care for them and also get my needs met, make that conversion? And so it's, I guess what I said at the beginning, a win-win for everyone involved. So that's what I see that I'm up against, the conversion.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And let me ask you, I guess, a closing question. Now that you're aware that you're a bit of a detective.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that going to drive you insane? Does that make sense? Meaning, is that something that...
Not if you don't say it all the time.
Open-ended question. Like, what's the purpose?
It was open-ended. I like that. Yeah. It was a question just to get you to think, not honestly to have a response.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It doesn't have to be perfect to practice it, Joey.
There you go. That's kind of what I'm getting to.
Can I take my takeaway?
Please.
My continued area of this. Yes, obviously with sales and selling and coaching, this navigate topic, but personally, like my continued growth with emotional intelligence is how am I showing up? What's triggering me? How am I reacting versus responding in certain situations? And like, how am I noticing that in others as well too? Because just like we've talked about with the self-talk the self-talk concept,
Yeah.
the more
Massachusetts.
yeah. The more you become aware of it, the more you start studying it, the more you start observing it in other people. So you'll see the way other people have emotional tantrums or not, or how they show up or how they avoid conversations. And my goal with this is to lean into hard conversations, and even when other people want to avoid them, or, and that's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not.
Like, just like taking a look in the mirror is not always easy when it comes to your areas of opportunity and things like that. So that's my continued work in this, is like, how am I continuing to lean in and work on myself? And can't control other people, but you can control what you're doing with yourself.
Absolutely. And it's been a crazy busy day, full of presenting, educating, discovering, interacting with new people, different feelings, different behavioral traits, things of that nature. And I've seen a lot of shifting from you. It's pretty cool to watch. I hope that the folks get something out of this. And at minimum, I hope they treat it as like a Pandora's box, because it doesn't go back in the box once it's open.
Yeah.
And it can lead wherever you want it to lead. And you technically don't have to be in sales in order to be aware of this concept and start utilizing it. You can use it with friends, your parents, your children. It's just utilizing and tapping into the concept of, how does this person feel? How do they react when they feel a certain way? And is that a right time to communicate? And if so, how do I communicate with this person? So super deep, super deep. I want to thank you guys for joining me in this discussion.
It's a pleasure.
This is man, like you said at the beginning, this can go on forever.
Big topic.
It really is. It's a big bite to chew. But I do believe that the folks listening and hope that if you are tuning into this podcast, you are someone that wants to hear this type of information and open these types of doors, because it's not necessarily having the information that's enough for folks like us. It's what are we going to do with it? That being the case, again, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Good conversation. Open plenty of eyes, ears, hearts, because of the feeling part. And if you are getting something out of these discussions, please make sure to like, share, subscribe, because you never know who's going to need this. And if you're the person that puts it in front of them, maybe you gain some points for doing so. But
I'm always happy to have these conversations.
yeah, I mean, they're deep. So that being the case, guys, thank you for joining me once again. All of you out there listening, we will catch you on the next one.
Someone has already done and is already doing what you want to do. And no, they didn't fall into a rich family to do so. They were not born lucky. You know you can be more. You can have